A massive and colorful Pride Parade was hosted in Canada's biggest city this weekend, capping off weeks of festivities during Pride Month. However, advocates say a lot still needs to be done to address what they call the normalization of hate in Canada. Community members and the Canadian Mental Health Association say they are worried about the impact of rising levels of hate on the mental health and safety of the LGBTQ plus community. Faye Johnstone, the president of the Society of Queer Momentum, says the organization has launched a campaign calling on the federal government to help. The Society's calls to action include the appointment of a special representative on addressing hate against the LGBTQ plus community and funding to combat disinformation. Well, joining us now to tell us more about this call for help and to unpack this normalization of hate is Ms. Sarah Kennell, National Director of Public Policy at the Canadian Mental Health Association. Ms. Kennell, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Thank you for having me, and happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride Month to you too, ma'am. Now, we saw some beautiful Pride parades this weekend, but we also heard from advocates that were highlighting increasing hate crimes against the LGBTQ plus community. So what do we know so far about these increasing levels of hate crimes in Canada in particular? And do we have any numbers or stats behind this?
We do. So Stats Canada does collect research around police reported incidents of hate against the 2S LGBTQ plus community. We know that between 2019 and 2021, incidents of police reported hate almost doubled during that time period. So we're certainly seeing a dramatic rise, but we also know that unreported incidents of harassment, intimidation, hate, and outward acts of discrimination are on the rise anecdotally across our communities. And that's of great concern because they do carry significant mental and physical health impacts.
Some very concerning stats there, ma'am. Now, I really do want to touch on what advocates are calling the normalization of hate. So what exactly is the normalization of hate and what does it look like in our country?
Really, we're seeing it proliferate across our country in the form of protests against school, the removal of books containing information about the 2S LGBTQ plus community from libraries. We're seeing online threats against activists within this community and the organizations that support them. And then we're also seeing, as we've been talking about, real acts of discrimination and hate against the community. And what it means is that children aren't safe and don't feel safe and welcome within schools. Individuals from the 2S LGBTQ plus community don't feel safe in their workplaces disclosing their true identity. And it creates a lot of shame and fear and stigma about living one's authentic and real identity. And that's what's of concern and really what we're seeing across the country.
Very concerning information indeed. Now, I mentioned the Society of Queer Momentum. They're calling for a special representative to address hate against the 2S LGBTQ plus community. So what is the CMHA's stance on this?
Well, certainly we support and stand behind the Queer Momentum Society and really the organizations across the country that are doing this important advocacy work. From our perspective, we really want to see greater accountability for these acts of violence, ensuring that individuals who have been harmed have the appropriate remedies and that their rights violations are addressed. And then also from a preventative perspective, what role could this position play in ensuring that resources are put to preventing this kind of hate from the first place, whether that be social and emotional learning in school to create societies and cultures of acceptance and inclusivity, also comprehensive sexuality education so people become aware of what diverse sexual orientations and gender identities mean and how we can accept them and love them.
All right, and now just about a minute left here, but how is this rise in hate crimes and this normalization of hate currently being addressed by officials?
Yeah, we've seen, an outpouring of support from many federal officials across party lines attend pride parades and speak out in support of the 2S LGBTQ plus community. We're seeing investments in queer and trans organizations to protect their safety during Pride Month, the action plan to combat hate, the federal 2S LGBTQ plus action plan and corresponding community capacity building fund. These are all positive things. However, we need to also look at what's happening at community level and ensure that we're putting resources behind addressing some of this rising hate as we see this national leadership progress.
All right, Ms. Kennell, thank you again for joining us today on Forum Daily.
Thanks for having me.